My name is Lucy Scandrett, and I am chair of the American Harp Society interview series. And today, Thursday, June 30th, 2016, I have the pleasure of interviewing Linda Wood Rollo. And today we are at the Emory Conference Center in Atlanta, Georgia. A beautiful, beautiful location. Linda just arrived from California last night. It's very exciting because this evening, Linda will be awarded the American Harp Society Lifetime Achievement Award. So richly deserved. And we want to recognize that Linda is a harpist, a teacher, a composer, and she has an arranger together with Suzanne McDonald of fabulous works, teaching materials, and I think the most well-known would be the Olympic series. We'll talk about that, and Harp for Today. She is a past chairman of the board of the American Harp Society, a past first vice president. She currently serves as the president of the Silicon Valley Harp Chapter of the American Harp Society. She is also a vice president of the World Harp Congress and been involved with them since the beginning. Was the editor of the World Harp Congress Review, and she's also vice president for the USA International Harp Competition in Bloomington. Wow. Wow. Welcome. I think that the beginning of your inspiration of having that opportunity to learn to play the harp is an amazing story. And I would love if you would describe how you started the harp, your background, and who your teachers were.
Well, I heard a woman play the harp when I was 8 years old in a church in Los Angeles. And at that time I had studied piano already for 2 years, I think. And I announced to my family that that's what I would like to do. But unfortunately, there was no harpist in the area where we lived, and also they were very expensive to buy because there were no troubadour harps at that time. So my family was not able to allow me to play the harp. So I studied piano all my life. I loved it, and also started playing the organ when I was about 13, and immediately was involved in church music and played in a church really from about the time I was 13 years old. And that was my musical career as a child. I think every night of the week I accompanied some kind of chorale or a group. Yeah. I envy so much the children who were playing the harp at age 6. I mean, it does make a huge difference, I think, in your life to start so young like that. But anyway, my story is that the problem was, how would I go to college? We didn't have a lot of money, especially to afford a private college. So I was considering the University of California in Riverside, which had just opened the year before. And also near to where I lived in Riverside was the University of Redlands. And many people in town had told me that I should go to the University of Redlands because they had this fabulous music department and organ choir department. So the day before I had to make that decision, there came a knock on our front door, and a woman that I had never seen before said, "My name is Hazel Evanson, and I'm the president of Zonta International Clubs of America, and we have heard about you from others in the town, and we would like to see you go to the University of Redlands, and we're prepared to pay the difference of whatever it costs for you to go there."
Oh my goodness.
So that was a true miracle. Things like that don't happen very often. And so my great good fortune is that I did get to go as a freshman to the University of Redlands. I entered as an organ major in choral church music, and the dean of the School of Music happened to register me, and he laughed at my schedule. He said, "You've signed up for too much, but by the way, we're offering harp at Redlands this year for the very first time. Would you be interested in that?" I said, "By all means I would." And so I signed up for that too. Turned out that if they could get 5 students, they were able to bring out a fine teacher from Los Angeles who was Marjorie Call.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So the first year I was commuting. We couldn't afford for me to live in a dorm. So I was able to practice 45 minutes a day on my lunch hour. That was it. The person that I commuted with would not wait for me after school. So that was the only free time I had. So that,
Linda.
but I had a wonderful teacher.
You did.
Very
you
inspiring
did.
teacher.
When you were studying with her, you had some marvelous experiences.
Yes.
If I recall.
Yes, well, what my teacher had to say to my mother was, "Thank you, God, for the money, even if the devil brought it." Because after I'd been at Redlands for 2 years, my teacher snagged a job for me playing the harp at the Dunes Hotel in Las Vegas, just as a substitute for 3 weeks for Kippy Lou Brinkman, who was the Miss Washington, who was taking that job personally. But I opened the restaurant at the Dunes Hotel.
Wow.
It was on terraces, and at the bottom there was a lake, which had a mermaid floating around on a boat, on a figure-8 boat. And the mermaid had to wear a long blonde wig. And the shockaroo, though, when I got there, was that the boat was so tiny, there was no room for a music stand. So everything I played for 4 hours a night had to be played by memory. So I did have to practice a lot during the day to learn enough music to play at night. So that was my second year of harp, so that was quite a growing experience.
For 2 weeks you did this.
3.
3?
Mm-hmm.
And your hair was blonde? Yes.
It was a wig. I have false eyelashes and a wig. I had my name was on the marquee, but really that wasn't what I wanted to do for a career. But boy, it's important to take every opportunity that comes. While I was playing there, a man called the maitre d' said, "Ask that harpist to come over on her break and talk to me." So I did, and he said he was enjoying my playing, and did I know who he was? He said, "My name is Irving Mills." Well, I didn't, but he said, "Oh, you know." "Yes, you know." He said, "I'm the composer of Moonglow, and It Had to Be You." And then I realized he was a very famous composer of popular music. He said, "I like your playing." He said, "Are you interested in a serious career in music?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely." And he said, "Then come and see me in my office in Beverly Hills when you get back to school." And I did, and consequently, he put me in touch with some foundations that allowed me to study in Europe. And subsequently, he, I think personally, helped for the purchase of my first harp through the University of Redlands. So, I mean, the things that you would never expect to happen out of that job.
Another amazing blessing, really.
Yeah.
And that harp,
I was very fortunate.
That harp was...
It was my career harp. I loved it so much. I just gave it up a few years ago. It was a rebuilt line in Healy Gold 23, but it had wide spacing and it had a gorgeous sound. And it was 50 years old. It cost $2,500 in 1965. And that was my career harp.
Wow. Yes. That's wonderful.
But people today don't realize how, that was a lot of money then.
Yes.
Even then my mother was a school teacher, and that was all I had.
That's amazing. Now, when you were in school, when you was any opportunity for orchestra experience or?
Yes. Now the outstanding harpist at Redlands when I was there was Eileen Bierman, who became Eileen Dischinger and then harpist with Baltimore. Yeah. And I was greatly inspired by her playing. Of course, she was very advanced, and she played in the orchestra until she graduated, and then I had to take over. I think the first orchestra piece I ever played was the Swan Lake Suite.
Oh.
I never had a chance to cut my teeth in a normal way.
Yeah, or condensers there. Yeah. Wow. Now, when you were in school, you also, did she have any ensemble or any other experiences?
Well, no, except that dear Marjorie had to come out to Redlands from Los Angeles and spend the night. So she would often take me to dinner.
Yes.
And then we would come back to school, and we would play duets together. Of course, I couldn't play so well, but I could sight read anything. And so, she just hung in there with me, and we played through every duet, she could come up with. And so it's a thrill for me to get to play, and good practice too.
Amazing to have that.
But no, I never had any, until later.
Now, when you were in school, is that when you met Dale Wood?
At Redlands, yes. He was something of a star there because they had a 100-voice choir that was the university choir, very fantastic. He would often be invited over to guest conduct, and also we sang quite a few of his compositions, and our conductor liked him very much. In fact, he introduced us. That's another story.
All right.
We were, we got to talking, and all of a sudden I realized that the choir had started singing, and we were still in the back of the room talking. And then, of course, I got teased mercilessly about that for missing the first choir performance. But anyway, yes, that was when I met Dale,
and so
he too lived in Riverside.
He did.
Yeah, so we had a lot in common.
Wonderful. And you had, when you finished the University of the Redlands, you then did. You had.
I went on tour.
Right.
I went on tour with the Klebanoff Strings.
That's.
For 3 months after I finished Redlands. In January, I took an extra semester because I felt I needed it harp-wise. So I waited and I did my senior recital then in the fall of that extra semester. So then I had a spring to kill, and that's when I did the tour with. That was really the first time I'd ever played much with orchestra. So that was good experience. And I went as a soloist. I played the Robert Maxwell Ebb Tide, which Klebanoff had arranged with orchestra background. It was beautiful.
It's a classic. It's really amazing. So in that tour, that's when you had your harp and you were.
I did. I took
wonderful experience. Yeah. And after the tour and you came back, is that when you went to USC?
Then I went to USC.
And that is when you
did my master's degree with.
And you met Suzanne.
Suzanne, yeah, and she was brand new teaching there too. I think she'd only been there 1 year.
Was she commuting from?
No, she was living in Pasadena.
Okay, good. So you had more opportunity for study.
Well, those days at USC were fabulous because we were in bungalows. The teacher on the other side of our bungalow was Malcolm Hamilton, the harpsichordist, and the next bungalow down was Yasha Heifetz, I think. But it was before the Olympics were held at USC, so it was before all the renovations. It wasn't fancy then. They didn't have the Steven Spielberg, School of Art, of Cinema. But, the quality of the teaching, even, in the 60s, was just fabulous. And then I received the Kodolsky Performance Grant there to help me with paying for.
So, what an honor!
Yeah.
I know.
But Suzanne, of course, was just a marvelous teacher. I regret that I only had 2 years to study with her. Kids who worked with her all their lives were very, very fortunate.
Oh yes, agreed. That was such an exciting. And you also had some. After you finished school, is that when you did your trip to Alaska?
No, after I finished USC, I stayed in Los Angeles and freelanced for a year or two, I think. And then I married Dale Wood and moved to San Francisco.
I see.
So after living in San Francisco, I did the 5 tours of Alaska, which was sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts.
Yes.
It was a thriller. It changed my life. It was an absolutely fantastic experience.
That's what
They flew me by bush airplanes, otters and geese, into all. Well, the geese are the ones that land on the water. I think one of them lands on the water. One of them, because, like, for example, in the Eskimo communities, like Togiak and out, in Kotzebue, no, they don't really have airports. You land on a parking lot, a strip of ground. There's no pavement. I mean, because of the money, because of the pipeline, all of the Eskimos were given quite a bit of money. So each of them had a car that had been flown in. They had a car sitting in their driveway, but no place to drive it. It's just, it was just in that transitional period, and I really did see the Eskimos, living in subsistence, and how, eating bear and seal and fishing for, I really experienced the old world Eskimo life. I played in each community for the schools, and then at night for the community themselves. And then I was flown to another one. Also to the Indian villages in southeast Alaska and the logging camps, as well as Fairbanks and Anchorage at the universities there. But the goal, while they were putting in the pipeline, was to bring culture to the Eskimos. And the Eskimo kids had really never seen anything like a harp, and their questions were interesting. They wanted to know what kind of wood was used and how it was built and how it was painted, how it was carved. They asked the craftsmen questions.
Yes, right.
Until I got to Fairbanks. And then a girl said, "Could you throw out a ballpark figure as about how much that gold column would go for?" That was this little 5-year-old's question. So obviously she was into gold.
Linda, what?
But I loved Alaska.
What an amazing experience.
Yes, I was very, very fortunate, very grateful for it.
And transporting the harp in
I had my 11. I had a brand new 11, which I took instead of my precious older 23 because I was worried about the temperature. Yes. The 11 held up fine. The temperatures were cold, and I think cold is better on the harp in a way than high heat.
Right.
But I always kept it in its case, and the bush airplanes, there was just room for the harp in its case and the pilot and me. It was very cozy. And once the pilots learned that I loved the scenery, they would go out of their way to show me, let's look over, there's always 3 bear on that island over there. I got a lot of side trips.
Did you taste the local cuisine?
I ate bear in Togiak. I did. I saw a whale on the floor of a home in Nome.
Wow.
And I met the famous drum maker who lived in Nome, have one of his signed Eskimo drums. They performed and danced. All of their folklore is told by dancers and narrators. It's all oral.
Yes.
All oral.
Yes.
And I was told that they rarely do that for outsiders. I was lucky that they did it for me. I made a cassette of it, but it's a cassette. I have it somewhere.
Oh, Linda.
It is a precious culture. I'm afraid it's disappearing because the kids are going outside now to get work. But I hope they'll keep up some of the old traditions.
Yes.
And they love the harp. Yeah.
Of course. And then when you were in San Francisco, you were also playing.
Oh yes, I did. I had a large class of students there. I built one. I taught about 5 different universities, and I played with the San Francisco Ballet, and occasionally second harp with the Symphony, San Francisco. Played principal with Oakland for quite a few years. That was my living.
So you had an opportunity to do Swan Lake again.
Many times, many times. Yes.
I love that. And you also you're arranging with Suzanne. It started more in the 70s, right? Would you say?
What we found out was that both of us and we're doing a lot of the same things. We were writing for and arranging for our students. Every student would come in needing something. I need this for a wedding. I need this for church. And so we would both, it always surprised me that everyone couldn't make their own arrangements. I just assumed everyone could. So I'd say, well, okay, I'll make something for you, and I'd give it away to them the next lesson. So finally we thought, we've been writing so many arrangements, maybe we ought to think about publishing. But in those days, publishing too was complicated. It was just the beginning of when the finale programs.
Exactly.
But after Suzanne went to Bloomington, and she needed someone to go with her there because she was still commuting to Juilliard. So
Yes.
I did go to Bloomington from San Francisco with her and helped her with the teaching load and took over when she was in New York, of course. But that's really when we started writing. That was about 1982, 83.
Right.
Started putting things down.
I think that you have told me this wonderful story.
I think I know what you're going to do. Well,
It's a wonderful story. I understand you have this passion, and it's like when you get so involved and you forget some little details.
Don't give away the punchline.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll let you
Suzanne
tell.
was had been invited to do a master class for Lucille Jennings in
Akron.
Ohio. I guess that's where it was. And so we drove over. It was a long drive, 4 or 5 hours, and did the class, and then took a harp, and coming home, it was late, but we decided to drive it, and we got to talking about forming a publishing company and how we could do it, and what we could call it, and what we would like to write, which immediately, it was the idea of the graded recital series that
Yes.
excited us, and we'd already written, separately some pieces by then. And we got so excited about this. And this was in January, I think. There was snow all around and icy. And all of a sudden, the car just came to a complete stop in the middle of the highway. Fortunately, no one was around us. And we had run out of gas. We had gotten so caught up in this whole concept of music works.
Yes.
And so then we had to climb over a fence and hike down a mountain to a farmhouse where we could see lights far, far away. And fortunately, the people let us come in and call AAA. But that was the beginning of Music Works. And I'm so glad we did it. So then the first thing were the graded recital pieces.
And so are we glad.
Well, in Harp Olympics, too, was a dream. It took us 3 years, actually, to write Harp Olympics because we knew what we wanted, but it was hard to get the format right. But, as experienced teachers know, there are many kinds of young students, some with easy facility, some
Yes.
with lots of piano and great reading skills and musical background. But what we wanted was a book that would create a balanced student from the young ages up, that they wouldn't just have fast fingers, but they would have a musical knowledge of theory and background and how to memorize and just the total package. And it was very complicated to do Harp Olympics, and I'm sure we probably could have done better, but that was, we really worked hard on it.
I know you did. It was wonderful to have it all in one volume.
We wanted it to help the
have-
teacher.
You have pieces that are appropriate for that level of the student.
We felt they would take a student up to the level of the Notterman sonatinas, for example. And for teachers in remote towns, maybe it would help them to
Yes,
teach. They could
yes.
use it as a guide, as a manual.
When do you recall the first time that you were in the exhibit area, you and Suzanne, and you had your Music Works? You had
I think so.
that maybe like 1983 or
Mm-hmm. It was in the South. It was in
Yes.
Pat Pence's, wherever that was.
Yes,
Yeah.
in Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem, yes.
Right, or Salem College there, and that's where I met you. I remember buying, and students love Moonlight, like your first song that Suzanne wrote.
Well,
and you did the chorale, some of those pieces.
we wanted to write some pieces that really made the harp sound good. So often students are are started on, piano transcriptions, early things that were originally written for piano, and that's fine. But, when you move the fingers from the piano to the harp, of course, the big spacing that we have between 1 and 2 then falls between 4 and 5 in the left hand if you're using piano music. So often it causes some awkwardness and stiffness if you're only doing piano transcriptions. And
Yes.
so we really wanted things that would utilize the beautiful sounds of the harp, and why not have a glissando? And where a student could really be working on tone quality and phrasing and finishing a beautiful piece without it being too hard for them.
Right. So I remember 2003, American Harp Society Institute and National Competitions at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. And a beautiful, beautiful hall. And that was the first time that we had the opportunity to hear pieces that you and Suzanne had written with an accompaniment. Procession, and Murray Borum was the one.
Dear Murray, I can't give him enough credit. He's such a gifted composer and arranger. But what happened was there was a girl, Kate, I'm blanking on her last name, in Utah who had won a concerto competition to play with the orchestra there in Salt Lake, and she didn't have a concerto. And so she played processional, and her mother wrote to me asking if we could write an orchestra part for it, or that she knew Murray Borum, she knew there was a composer that could do this. And so we hired Murray Borum to write an orchestra part for processional, and it was fantastic, and it was so successful that then, I'm wrong, it wasn't processional, it was two guitars. It was two guitars. So anyway, Murray ended up writing toccata, Suzanne's toccata,
right.
my two guitars, and my processional, and most wonderful orchestra parts designed for high school orchestra level.
Yes. And
And then piano reductions. I do them on recitals with piano quite often. And I know Pat Wooster has done them in used troubadour harps too. She's, split them up into parts so that you don't have to worry about the levers.
I use them all the time.
Do you really?
Yes, I have used the processional many. Those works the accompaniments are fabulous.
I'm just remembering it was Kate Zerker.
Oh, yes.
Was the Utah girl whose mother started that whole process because she won a competition. So one of them is dedicated to Kate.
To Kate. And the harpists played together. Oh, it was beautiful.
In Utah.
It was more than
that was
one.
a thrill
Yes.
for me. That was a thrill. To hear.
That was very, very exciting. So congratulations. A wonderful collaboration with Murray.
Yes, we appreciate Murray, and
of course
every day we do.
Right, because he's at Line and Healy in Salt Lake. Wow, that is so important to have repertoire for that level student to be used in the schools.
And for that level orchestra.
Yes.
Yes, I'm using them too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to think back with you also. In your performance career, I mean, you have everything. Wow, Linda. You did. I recall, is it Chorus Line you did?
Oh,
the opening with.
Yes, that was in San Francisco.
So you were still
72, I think. Well, for some reason, Chorus Line opened in San Francisco, not Broadway in New York.
Okay.
And so, yes, I did do the opening for 3 months or something of Chorus Line, and Marvin Hamlish was there. He was sitting in the pit with us, moving from player to player, rewriting the part as we played.
Oh.
Yeah, erase, and it was a little stressful, but he was a nice.
Be a lot stressful.
He was a very nice man, and I loved the show.
And you guys, I loved it.
I loved the original cast and all the lines. I
Played
sometimes would find tears running down my cheeks just listening to the things they were saying on stage.
Yes, I love playing that one. And you went from the orchestra pit to backstage.
Oh yeah, it was very crowded in the. It was the Curran Theater, and it was a small pit, and a big orchestra. They had a lot of
new challenge.
brass. Yeah, so then I had to play backstage on remote TV with the conductor. I was watching the conductor on remote TV, but it was fun being backstage because then I was right with
Then you were even more
the crew, the staff, the actors. Yeah.
Wow. Oh.
Mm.
So when you were in Bloomington and teaching, and did you have much of an opportunity to perform, or was it primarily teaching?
A little bit. It was primarily teaching. I practiced a lot. Of course, Suzanne and I did record quite a bit of our books. And I remember playing Sleeping Beauty up in Indianapolis and a few things like that. But we were just so busy. I always practiced, but no, it wasn't a big performing opportunity.
Now, I think you also had the opportunity of going to Holland.
Yeah, I was jumping back and forth, but yeah, I was so fortunate because when I did my master's at USC, Suzanne really encouraged any of us who could to go to the Holland Harp Weeks. And I got that foundation money that first year from Irving Mills to go. And it really changed my life. I had never been out of California, not to mention the United States.
Right.
I lived a very sheltered life. And there in Holland were the leading harpists from all of the world. The Russians were there, and the Europeans, the Spanish. And they were the dearest, sweetest people, and they all played for each other. They all brought their students, and everyone loved each other. And everyone played a different school of technique. Everyone's hands were different, and no one cared. That changed my life. And everyone's supportive and just hungry to know what was happening in other countries, what new pieces were being written in other countries. Really, that's when I became so inspired to help with the World Harp Congress magazine, which started out as a newsletter. Because in the 70s, we had no computer, we had no fax, we had no email. All we had was letters, handwritten letters, and the telephone, which was extremely expensive. So it was much, much harder to stay in touch with each other. Yes. So that, the World Harp Congress really helped the communication of the world. And now it's hard, I suppose, for young people to even imagine how precious communication was in those days.
Absolutely. Oh,
to learn from each other now, we can just go to Facebook.
And so 1981, is that right? 1980, 81 is when the World Harp Congress was
Yes,
formed?
83, I believe.
Okay.
Thea Berghout had, of course, had a grant from the Dutch government all those years to bring the people to Kweekhoven outside of Amsterdam.
Right.
But then some of that money started to disappear. And Maria Krczynska, was her partner in all of the planning for the Holland Harp Week. But they both grew older, and it became too much for them.
Yes.
And Sophia wanted out, and the rest of us weren't willing to let it stop. That's when the committee was formed to start the World Harp Congress.
Wow. So this
out
is all
of the Holland Harp Week.
All part of this time that of your study with Suzanne, and then working on.
It was a marvelous time.
A marvelous, exciting time, and without a computer, with
amazing, we survived. Now I can't survive without my computer.
No. And here we are, if we don't have our cell phone. So when we're talking about involvement with the American Harp Society, California has been very, very important. I mean, Catherine Gothhofer was
they
president.
They inspired me so much. I was
Dorothy
just a
Remsen and Ann Stockton, and you.
I was just a student then.
You did participate.
Well, my teacher was from LA too, so she encouraged me and invited me several times to come out and perform for the. Well, the LA chapter had a great plan. They rented the Union Building in downtown LA on a Sunday once a month. They had their board meetings there, and then after the board meeting, they always featured as many people really as wanted to play in Los Angeles. I remember Dwayne Fulton and others.
Yes.
They went, to try out programs, to everything from concertos to students playing simpler things, which I did. And they were always supportive, and then they always had a little reception afterwards. And of course, for us younger people, what a thrill it was to stand in the same room and talk to Dorothy Remsen, who's playing for Walt Disney Studios, and, all of them, and Catherine and Anne, and there were so many others too, besides them, that were so gracious to the supportive and encouraging.
Yes.
Boy, that would be my word to everyone now, is it means so much to students when the older people encourage them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that they
we don't,
they pass it on.
Students don't see where they're going
No.
always.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we especially need that. And so having that opportunity, you would say, within the American Harp Society chapter, and having, I always know that Catherine, Anne, and Dorothy were amazing in what they gave of their
Right,
lives,
there
their
was
time, and
Catherine Julier and
Oh,
Dorothy
and
Victor,
many others, yes.
and Marjorie Call, and
Right.
so many fine. It was a mecca
And-
of fine harpists in LA.
And I think that tradition still
Oh,
is
yes.
there today, very,
Yes.
very, very important. So you also, I'm trying, the other involvement for you has been the USA International Competition.
Oh my. Yes, we just finished one.
Yeah.
Yes, with a wonderful winner that you all know, Catherine
Yes.
Ciocci, and she
Was-
played a great contest, and we're just thrilled to have her as our winner.
Yes, and she is, when we had our institute competitions in Logan at Utah
Yeah, I was
University
there, yeah.
last year, she won the concert artist
I know.
position.
Mhm.
So what a blessing to have.
She's really on a roll.
That's very exciting.
She deserves to be. She is in a class by herself, no
Yes.
question about it. A wonderful artist.
I also have, I admire so much how you have been involved in so many areas. You've given of yourself to the American Harp Society, to the World Harp Congress, and now the USA International Competition, and with David, of course.
Well, I
Strong
feel,
support.
I've gotten back so much more than I've ever been able to give, and I am only grateful to all of those organizations and to all the people in my life, because they have given back so much to me and made my life a very rich one.
Oh, yeah.
I think that you had wanted to talk a little bit about Harp for Today.
Yes, I did. That was
And
the
I did want to
last
tell
thing I
you
wanted
that
to talk to you.
the last thing we published, or have published so far in Music Works, maybe there will be more, but after the Harp Olympics, many, many teachers, you included, wrote to us asking if we might consider writing an adult method. Not that the Harp Olympics were designed to be only for children, but they somewhat are, and being used that way. And Suzanne had always wanted to write an adult method, and it was also at a time where French music became very expensive in the United States. So the Harp for Today turned out to be not a progressive method like Harp Olympics, but
Right.
more a manual for teachers,
Right.
taking every technique and with colored pictures and explaining each technique and how to do it, and then giving exercises to practice in the technique. And then at the end, the wonderful lectures that Suzanne used to give in her master classes
Yes.
on stage presence and memorizing and tone quality. Just the rich lectures are in the back of the book. I wanted to say, though, that it isn't a book that a student would just start and play straight through. A teacher should use it as a textbook for
Yes.
whatever technique is needed. And it has been very successful, so it is meeting a need. It has already been translated into 4 languages.
Oh, my.
It's been translated into Korean, Chinese, Japanese, and believe it or not, what's the Persian? Farsi
Oh,
in Iran. Yes. Believe it or not,
Oh,
yes, we had to
my.
sign off letters of permission for them to translate there. So
Wow.
we are very pleased that maybe it is helping the whole world.
It filled a great need. I know that, I mean, having the pictures, the photos in color, very specific directions is invaluable. You know, to have it all
Again, that took quite a few years
Yeah.
to put together too.
right.
That was harder because we weren't living
Right, you
in
were
the
you were
same
in
town then. I was in
Saratoga.
California, so everything had to go back and forth, emails.
Now, and you've continued to do with Suzanne editing arrangements.
Yes, we'll probably do some more. We just
That's
ran, we
what-
just
you're
ran out of
exhausted.
time.
Right.
We've just been so terribly busy.
Right.
Mm.
And the other thing I've enjoyed is your chapter there of the American Harp Society. You can go on YouTube, right? Or is it, and
I don't
see, or
know.
Facebook, that you can see some of the performances that were at the churches.
Oh, really? See,
Yes.
you're more savvy
Well,
on
I
that than I
see.
am.
Which is inspiring.
Yes, you know, they did. Our chapter did a whole program on our haiku for the harp. We did it in the most famous Japanese gardens in
That's what I was
Saratoga,
thinking
the
of.
Hakone Gardens. And we used young children to play each piece. And then we have a Japanese member with an American husband. And they wore their kimonos and they read the haiku poetry that goes with each of the pieces. They read it first in Japanese and then in English.
Oh, wonderful.
And then the child came up and played the piece. Oh, it was one of
I
our.
remember that was maybe about a year
And
ago.
Suzanne came out for it.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was a very exciting, interesting program.
That's a wonderful.
You know, and that haiku, the
Celebrating.
haiku book too. We wrote that at a time where we had just started teaching at IU, and became aware that college students really were thrown by contemporary notation. They hadn't had much experience, or in orchestra. What did they do with all of these different?
Yes.
And so we thought it would be helpful for them to have a book of pieces where they could practice all of these extracurricular activities.
Sounds that we are not
Well,
always
and in
requested.
rhythms, you know,
Yes.
being able to change from 6/4 to 8/4 to 5/2 to, you know, things that you get in orchestra
And-
playing. And so it was intended to be a training book as well.
Exactly.
But of course now the contemporary music has changed again in 10 years. So.
Yeah, it is amazing. But it's very helpful, like even in Sweeney Todd, I mean, the meter is constantly changing.
Mm-hmm,
So having the
so that the
haiku-
kids aren't afraid of strange things.
Right, right. And
They
it's
love it
actually
now.
lots of fun. They love using the paintbrushes and
And the cat and the meow.
Yeah.
That's maybe the most famous.
yeah, wonderful. So it's just so amazing. I admire so much all. It's amazing your gifts that you have given to the to everyone. Your passion. Just think
I really
about
love
that.
teaching.
You
too.
love your teaching, and I know.
I've been blessed with some extraordinary students.
And you continue to stay connected.
I like to stay connected, but I appreciate it when they write to me, or I can't really keep in touch with them if they don't let me know where they are. But I do. I try to help them. I write lots and lots of letters of recommendation all the time,
and
I want them to ask for anything they need.
Right. So you certainly are carrying on the mission statement now: celebrate, inspire, and empower. And you have done that.
Well, thank you
Fabulous,
very much.
fabulous. Thank you so much, Linda. This was an honor. Thank
My
you.
honor.